What is up to all the difference makers out there? Man, you know what? If you listen to my episodes, this is a familiar thing that you hear me say. I love what I do. And it's all about the people. It's all about the people I get to be around. Last week's episode, Mark Warren said it. He was like, is there any other way to do business than to do it around the people? And this guy across from me today, I've got to work very closely with since, end of March. So we're coming up on the year. It doesn't really seem that long. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. So it's been an awesome journey, and I get to. If you listen to this episode or listen to this podcast, you've heard me talking about Danny quite a few times because he is one of those unicorns, and it is awesome getting to work with the unicorns that are in the sales industry. And we'll get into why he's a unicorn here soon enough. But just in this last year, he's grown sales 70%. He's landed his biggest deal throughout this year. And he's starting to become somewhat of a LinkedIn influencer. So I'm excited to talk about all that stuff. Danny Eller, welcome to Coffee and Grit.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Man, I'm so pumped up that it worked out today.
Oh yeah,
to be here.
Definitely.
So what's really cool is when we first met and you started talking to me and started telling the journey, because also past listeners or listeners of the podcast, you remember Mike Eller is Danny's dad and owner of Populous Cleaning, which you'll notice on Danny's shirt there.
Yep.
So kind of tell me, growing up with the family business and kind of what that journey has been like for you.
Oh yeah. Crazy and like so many blessings along the way. Such a crazy ride. My granddad started it. He quit teaching at Eastern and dove into, had to feed his family, right? Had 3 kids at home, dove into cleaning churches, small churches. And so if you've listened to the episode my dad was on, you heard that. And from there kind of grew it. Never really had, I don't think he really had motive to grow it to what it is today. I think it was really just like, okay, I'm done doing this part of my life and I'm done teaching, and now I have to do something to feed my family. And so my dad grew up in it, went to college, did 4 years at Eastern, and then kind of got in with both feet after that, and is really responsible for the growth that has happened in the last 20 years, and more so in the last 10 years. And so that's been really cool to watch. I got in it when I was 13, and my dad said, okay, you're going to go work on the weekends and you're going to go clean carpet and you're going to stay out of trouble, or at least I'm going to try and keep you out of trouble. And so I would clean carpet every weekend, basically, from probably 13 to 17 years old, 17, 18 years old.
So you're indoctrinated into the family business.
Oh, yeah. It's funny because all my brothers, when they come home from school and stuff, it's like, you're not just going to sit on your butt the whole time at home and do nothing. You're probably going to get put to work. And so I very quickly, we realized that that's how that works in our household. But cut my teeth on that. And if nothing else, I think that really kind of instilled a certain level of work ethic. And grit, really, because if you've ever cleaned carpet or stripped and waxed a floor or done ceramic tile and grout, like, it's hard work.
It's not the glamorous work.
Oh, it's not glamorous. It's at night. It's crummy hours. I mean, some folks like the midnight shift, but it's tough hours, and physically it's tough. I can remember the guy that I worked with, who was maybe 15, 20 years older than me, just nonstop complaining about his back. Because when you're cleaning carpet, you're just kind of bent over the whole time, right? Yeah. And you're just lit up. And so now, we have the luxury that, we got vans that are kept at our warehouse. And so twice a year, I go down and grab those vans and clean my own carpet. And I'm reminded how freaking hard it is on your body. So yeah, it was a great experience for me to really just build some work ethic and some grit along the way there. Yeah.
So you worked there to 17,
right?
Kind of like what happened from there?
Yeah. So 17, 18, I was a junior, senior in high school around then. And so I got into the restaurant industry at that point. My dad, there was a barbecue joint in downtown Ypsi that opened up, And my dad goes, I think this might be a good experience for you. And they're looking for, bussers and barbacks and all that stuff. And so, why don't you reach out to them? And so I worked a couple soft openings and then took that gig. And that worked out well for me because it allowed me the opportunity to do a co-op with high school. So I would go to school. And for me, it was kind of unique because it was the restaurant industry. It's late, right? Later at night. So I would basically come to school at the back half of the day. Okay. And then I'd go to work 4 nights a week, right?
Oh.
But
so you wouldn't go in the morning because you were working later at night.
Exactly, because I was working later. And so you're closing down, you're closing at midnight or 1. And full disclosure, like labor laws and all that stuff. I was 18 my whole senior year. So I was an adult, basically. Yeah. And, legally I was an adult. And so... yeah, I would come in the back half and then I would work and I would work, 30 plus hours a week. So I've always, if I'm not working, I don't really know what to be doing.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you were just talking about like taking a vacation, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like I don't know how to take a vacation. So I did that and I did that for a couple of years and, I still had the Populous thing going on the side, but it kind of became evident that I needed to go kind of do some stuff on my own. So, with the family business, it's a little bit of a security net, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not careful, you can kind of take that for granted. So I was 18, I think I was closer to 19. And it became clear that, okay, I need to go do my own thing. I need to leave Populous. I'm no longer happy here or whatever. And I had a lot of question marks that I needed to answer for myself.
Yeah.
Anyone who knows me knows that I was very headstrong youth. I like to refer to myself as my father's karma for his own childhood. I think probably a lot of firstborns are in some way, shape, or form. I had to go do my own thing. I moved out as soon as I possibly could when I was done with high school. And I actually ended up moving into a house that I found through someone I worked with at the restaurant, which was good. I mean, that connection was nice. And I lived there for a couple of years. And in that time, I did a lot of soul searching. And it didn't take me very long to figure out that, okay, you can bust your back for 80 hours a week, but if you don't figure out the direction you want to go in your life, what are you going to do? So I weighed a lot of different options. I'm 18 living on my own, answering to no one, including myself most of the time. And so it was, you need some structure in your life, Danny. And I think that I think a blessing and a curse for me is that I'm pretty self-aware. So I can I know when it's my own fault. When I'm in a certain situation, I know that it's my own fault. I put myself there or whatever, right? So I go, okay, what are you going to do? You need some structure. So you can join the military. You can be a policeman. You can be a fireman, right? Well, what little kid didn't grow up wanting to drive the fire truck?
Yeah.
So I started poking around and funny, one of our customers was, I believe still is Pittsfield Township. And my dad set up a meeting, or gave me the contact information for the fire chief over there. And so I got to sit down and have a meeting with him and just kind of pick his brain, like, hey, how's the fire service work? And what's that like? And just as I was kind of exploring that idea, and that he led me to, and this is just the way the fire service is, he led me straight to an opportunity, basically, through Ann Arbor Township as a paid-on-call fireman. But I needed to have certain certifications in order to do that. So I took out a loan, went to Schoolcraft Fire Academy, which they offer a couple different options, one of which was a 9-week program that was paramilitary. It was every day for 9 weeks, five days a week for 9 weeks, not the weekends. And so I completed that. And as soon as I completed that, I basically had the job at Ann Arbor Township as a paid-on-call fireman there. Did not have my EMT certification yet, and so they hired me in without that, and then actually, while working for them, they paid to put me through that training, awesome. Which was huge for me, 19 years old.
Oh, yeah.
When I went through the fire academy, I actually had to move back into my parents' house for a hot second, obviously, because I wasn't going to be able to work.
Yeah.
It was 5 days a week. It was 8 hours a day. I mean, it was like school basically, right? So how was I going to work on top of that? I had rent that I had to pay. So I moved back into my parents for that time. And then I believe I was back for maybe 6 months. And so super helpful that Ann Arbor Township paid for that. And I worked in Ann Arbor Township for a couple of years. I moved back out of my parents' house, back into the same house that I had been in. And then for those 2 years I was in Ann Arbor Township, I was constantly looking for full-time fire jobs. I thought, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I found an opportunity for an auxiliary firefighter position in Novi, city of Novi. And it was funny, actually, I had a couple of friends who I had gone through the academy with that ended up working there. They're like, this is great, you get even more experience here. Because in a paid-on-call setting, you're responding to each call.
Okay, yeah.
And so unless you want to go hang out at the station all day, you got to work another job or two. And that's what I did. I had like 2-3 jobs at the time. So the paid-on-call thing was hard for me at that place in my life. A lot of people truly enjoy the paid-on-call departments, but it just wasn't working for me.
You're trying to make it.
I'm trying to do something. At the time, I thought it was the career that I wanted, and so I got this opportunity over in Novi, and applied for that opportunity. That was a whole process in and of itself. 50-page background check, home interview with a detective. They call like 5 different references. You got several different panel interviews. You got fire captains and fire lieutenants sitting there drilling you on a hot seat with questions. I mean, it's just a whole thing. An incredible experience, really. I've not been through anything like it since. That, yeah. Seriously, I just haven't. And the whole time you're going, man, this seems like a ton. I mean, a psych eval with a psychiatrist, a 500-question test, psych test, all this stuff, and you're like, all for a fire job. But when you think about it, then once you're in the fire service, you're like, you're asking the public for trust to enter their home or whatever. You know, we used to talk about it. We seldom meet folks on their best days, right? We most of the time meet them on their worst. Yeah. And we could meet them at 2-3 in the morning, and we are just asking that they trust us to walk into their home. So it makes sense that you go through all that stuff, the prerequisites, in order to get that role, in order to land that role.
What do you do when you're, psychologically, when you're in that situation? Yes. It could be detrimental to you or the team.
Yep. So I land that job. I work that job. You go through a probationary period at every department, and it's different at every department. But I was working 12-hour shifts after my probationary period. So it was about 8 months of probation where I was still working 3 jobs because you only get so much work time at the department because you're lowest on the totem pole. You don't have any seniority. So I do that for 8 months, and then I can finally drive the fire truck. And
I made it.
I know, seriously. And it was like one of the coolest parts of the job, obviously. And every department's different. And obviously I didn't work in a big city like a Detroit or like a Chicago. I have friends that work in those departments and love it. I just did not end up there. That wasn't where I was supposed to end up, obviously. But even the 4 years that I spent in Novi, I was still kind of chasing the full-time fire thing because it was an auxiliary role. So, I was working 2 to 3 12-hour shifts a week. And typically they were overnight, or sometimes they were like weekend days and stuff like that. And that served me so well in shaping me as an adult. Just like I did a total of 6 years in the fire service. And so that time really helped mold me, in those crucial years, really, in your development.
Was it kind of what you're looking for? You like structure?
Yeah, no, big time. The structure, the camaraderie, the expectations, the professionalism that is just instilled from day one, really. Everything they talk about, you're not just a person, you're a firefighter. So like when you do something in the public eye, they don't just see it as, okay, Danny Eller did such and such. No, it's like the Novi firemen did this. Yeah. So you have to be you have to mind your P's and Q's, you know what I mean? And I needed that. That's where I was at 19 and at 20, 21, that's what I needed. Yeah. So from 19 to 25, 26, it kind of shaped me in those young adult years, which was, I think, huge. Inevitably, along the way, I had some other opportunities. Yeah, I did a personal training gig for about 3 years in the Ann Arbor area, and I thought at one point, you know, I was always kind of open to different opportunities. Once I was, you know, a few years into the fire service, I started to think, well, do I want to do this long term?
Yeah. Or was it what you needed?
Exactly, at that period of
yeah.
my life. Exactly. And so, you know, do I want to do this long term, or you know, because I'm also kind of good at this coaching thing over here, this personal training thing. Maybe I give that a shot. I was involved with a gym that was pretty young, and so they were pretty ambitious, and you know, they wanted to open other locations and stuff like that. So there was like, you know, is there room to develop there for me? Is there a full-time career there for me? And I was kind of playing with all those ideas, and that ended up falling apart. And it was shortly after that fell apart in mid 2019, I was still on the fire service, that I really kind of looked at my life as a whole and said, okay, you know, I had met a girl that I liked a lot through the gym, actually. So, you know, it's funny, these we've had this conversation before, but these things I've done in my life, they've given me exactly what I needed at that point, right? You know, fire service for one thing, and then the gym led me to my wife, right? And now the mother of my child. So, which is amazing. And so I had met her, right? I was serious about her. We had actually gotten engaged in early 2019. And by mid 2019, the gym thing fell apart for me, and I had to do some soul searching again, which I'm not all that unfamiliar with. And I go, you know, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And how are you going to support, you know, your future family, hopefully? And I think I've always kind of had like an entrepreneurial spirit. I think that comes from my dad. Yeah. He's a big entrepreneur. Yeah. I've always kind of had that from the time he was 8 years old, taught me how to use a lawnmower and said, go on, go mow some lawns, find some money. I'm done giving you an allowance. So yeah, I took a meeting with the general manager at Populist at that time. I took a meeting with my dad and, you know, prayed on it and just decided that, okay, I was going to come back to Populist, and I wasn't sure what that looked like. Yeah. Which it was kind of a leap of faith for me. Wasn't sure exactly what it looked like, but knew that if I was coming back, I was coming back for good, you know? So yeah, that's my little story there in a snippet.
I love it. And, it's so awesome. One thing I love way back a few minutes ago, you talked about being that self-aware, and that's one of the things I love working with you is like, we'll go to have a conversation. There's a couple of things that I'm like gonna go talk to you about, and then you're like, yeah, and then you just start diving into it. I'm like, I'm checking it off. I'm like, all right, we talked about this.
It's that like me and my wife have that conversation all the time. It's such a blessing and a curse, because most of the time, you know, if I'm irritated with something in my life, it's my own doing most of the time. And so if I'm like deflecting frustration onto other people or whatever, it's like, I know that I'm at the root. As painful as that truth is, I know that. And that's just come with time, I guess, you know, and some of these experiences I've had to experience along the way. So,
well, and it is those experiences. I loved how you talked about like the different things that, you know, that you needed to put structure into your life to like look at, you know, kind of like you are this brand. You are, when you go out in public, you're representative, not just the fire department, but kind of like I see it now as you seeped into yourself, into Populist, and what you do as a profession. But then you meet your wife, you know, working in this job, and, you know, you think this might be a career, and maybe that's not where that's that career, but then you meet your wife, mother of your children. And the whole point of this is I meet so many young people. I've worked with so many young people that are in such a hurry to get to the rest of their life. Yes. They're in such a hurry to get to that final destination where they're like, oh, I've made it, you know? Right. But the beauty, the joy, everything that's worth it is in that struggle along the way.
Oh yeah.
If you just, you could have been at Populist from day one. Right. You needed to go through these experiences in order to arrive to where you are now.
Yep. Yeah. And another thing that endeavor into fitness gave me was, you know, not just my wife, obviously, but early on in the fire service there, you're seeing things that you're not used to seeing. I'm in this role that I'm not used to being in. And again, I'm young. I'm on my own. I'm not answering to anyone really, aside from my fire captain, fire lieutenant, and stuff like that. So, I start eating poorly. I'm 21. I'm drinking at the bar, and next thing you know, I'm putting on extra weight. And that's not all that conducive to be running into burning buildings.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, when you put that gear on, any extra weight you have is amplified because it's heavy and it's hot.
Yeah.
So you got to be in good shape, right? So that was kind of the avenue to which I discovered the gym. And it actually came through one of my best friends in high school was working at that gym in Ann Arbor. And so I reached out to him. I said, hey man, I got like 20, 30 pounds extra weight I need to get rid of. Can you write a program for me? And one thing led to the next. I ended up with a job over there. I mean, that was months later. Obviously I had got myself into good shape and was comfortable enough to coach, but really at the same time wasn't really comfortable enough to coach. And I think that is also kind of an underlying tone in everything I've done in my life where I might not have experience with something. I just kind of get thrown into it.
Yeah.
Or jump in with 2 feet. And
well, it goes back to Grant's question.
Yeah.
So before we started, Grant asked a question to, as we're warming up the mics is, if you got dropped off in Survivor, would you win?
Right.
And I answer yeah, absolutely
Yeah.
you win. But
Yeah.
it comes down to that.
Yeah.
And you said you weren't sure because you don't have the experience in that. And then it comes back around to what you're saying
I feel like I'm always
now.
a little bit tentative, but I'm never all I need is just a little nudge. Okay, let's go. And then, jump in and do it. I mean, it's the same thing in what I'm doing now at Populist is I had I didn't have any formal experience in what I'm doing, obviously, in sales, but I do have sales experience when you look back at it, in cutting lawns for 5 years and personal training and selling personal training, and coaching and selling the gym and whatnot. So I do have some of that experience.
Even if you look at it, because I love asking people that don't have any sales experience what the best sales experience they have is, because they always look at me dumbfoundedly, like I just told you I don't have any sales experience, stupid.
Right.
No, and you seriously, you think about even the experiences you've had that led you into the connections that got you into the fire department, right? Because how many people do all that training and then don't have a connection?
Yep.
Right. So even that early, figuring out how to build relationships and get connections and things, all that stuff is sales experience.
Yeah. I mean, right. I hadn't even thought about that, but, totally.
But when you went back to Populist, did you think, I'm running into sales?
No. Okay. Yeah. So things fall apart and I make this decision to go back to Populist. And one, I knew I was going to take a pay cut in doing what I was doing, and I had to work my life out in order to do that. I had to make the arrangements in order to be able to take that pay cut, right? I knew that if I was going back to Populist, that it probably wouldn't be something that I was super thrilled about doing right away. I wasn't going to get a role that I was super giddy about.
They weren't just walking you into the VP level or the the sales
right. And I
level
wouldn't want that. Here's the thing. I wouldn't want that. When you grow up in a family business, it's, like I said, it's so easy to take that for granted. On the flip side of that is there's no way around the fact that your last name is the same last name as the owner's.
Yeah.
And so I have taken that so seriously. I've always made a point to take that serious. I don't ever want to be somewhere inside this company where someone goes, should he really be there? Or is he just there because he's Mike Eller's kid?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely.
So I'm pretty cognizant of that, and I knew in coming back that I was going to make sacrifice, basically, and not just me. I wasn't the only one that was going to make a sacrifice. My wife was going to make a sacrifice in me coming back, and so she had to be okay with this move too. And so when I came back in an operational capacity in 2019, and I actually stayed on in Novi part-time and worked every Sunday night for almost a year straight. And in ops, I worked 5 nights a week. So I worked 6 nights a week for a year straight. And my wife loved it. Just kidding. And she hated it, right? But she knew, but we had this conversation. Okay, so I do this, and this is going to lead to another opportunity. And I'm not sure exactly what that opportunity is yet. And we didn't know. the job offer for me to come back to Populous was, okay, you do a year in operations, then we have a conversation. That was it. There was no promise of anything further beyond that.
It could be a closed wall. You open up the door and it's like
oh,
brick
no,
wall.
Here's another year of the same thing. And so I was just prepared for, whatever that conversation was going to be at the end of a year, right? But also, I wanted to be out there in the field. I wanted to experience it firsthand. And I had done it 6 years ago.
Yeah, from
right?
a different lens, right?
From a different lens. And the company was different 6 years ago. Things were just different 6 years ago. The company's grown immensely in the last 5 years. Yeah. So it looked totally different when I came back in 2019 than it did, when I left when I was 19.
Yeah.
Came back, did that for a year, and actually did it longer than a year. COVID happened somewhere in there. And so I worked through COVID both in janitorial and cleaning, and also in the fire service every Sunday night. That was incredible. That felt like it put 5 years on my life. Yeah. It was so insane, to be on the fire side of things where you're constantly seeing patients, and then on the flip side, in the cleaning world, it's like no one's in the offices, but you still have to clean it, right? You're dealing with exposures in areas and organizations tracking that stuff, and you going in and doing electrostatic spraying. And I mean, it was just
stuff you would have never pictured.
Holy cow. Yeah. Just what a year.
Yeah.
And so and I was in ops for, over a year in coming back. And at one point, the conversation actually became, okay, we think we want you to be an area manager, which is an operational role, is a management role in operations. And I wasn't sure, is this something I can do? Or, I've never really managed people. How do I do that? So here I am prepping myself to be an area manager mentally. And then things changed like they do. Yeah. And they go, actually, we think you're better suited to be in sales. Which I kind of was like, okay, I guess I could see that, but this feels like a big chance you're taking on me.
And where do I start?
Yeah. My dad had primarily been the sales engine, if you want to call it that, for 20 years. But in reality, he's, how it goes. Entrepreneurs, they're wearing 7 different hats, right? Yeah. And that's what he was doing at any given point. And so, when they were ready to introduce me to sales, he wasn't wearing 7 different hats. We went to the EOS model 5 years ago, and it got him out a lot of different seats that he didn't need to be in, and allowed him to be more of an owner. But he still was the only person in a sales capacity, so to speak, right? So I inherited a CRM that was a complete mess. From someone who would occasionally put, a couple things in here when he drove past a building on 275, and he'd put a note in there, or it was very intermittent, just kind of hodgepodge all over the place.
It's funny, we never talked about this. That's hilarious.
And so I'm sifting through this, and naturally he's got to be a part of this, right?
Because there is notes and
it's well, what were you thinking here, or whatever, and but don't get me wrong. Without my dad involved for those first 6 months that I did what I did, nothing, I wouldn't be right here talking to you. So.
It's funny because it's the process of putting any person, taking what they've done as a person, and then putting it and figuring it out, and then figuring it out for yourself. Because everybody's a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and it's funny because, my dad and I are so much alike in a lot of ways. And I think that's why we butt heads so much in my younger years. We're both headstrong. Yeah. We're both drivers. We're both doers. We're both the type of people to just kind of jump in with both feet. But that comes with its challenges too, right? Maybe you're not as organized as you want to be, or whatever, right? So we're alike in a lot of ways, but we're also kind of different in a lot of ways. And part of that is the 6 years I spent in the fire service. It just shaped me a little bit different, and I just kind of see the world just a bit different than he does. But I needed him for 6 months. I probably could have used him for longer.
Yeah.
but he was very much like, okay, you're good now. I'm out of here. I don't need to be, I got other things I got to do. And
he's taking that last hat off. And
exactly. Right. He was like waiting for the day he could get that hat off him. But that's, I cherish that time I worked next to him too. And so we talked about this when we present to bigger potential clients.
Yeah.
And I pull him in for that stuff now because he's very much removed from the sales process, and it should be that way. He's an owner, and he's, in his 50s, and he's busted his tail to be where he is, and I want him to just be doing what he wants to be doing, right?
Yeah.
And so it's fun to pull him in and do those things together, because in the first 6 months, I was just like soaking up everything that I possibly could from that man. Just 20 plus years of business experience, and I'm like, here's little humble me.
Yeah.
And crazy enough, we had incredible success in my first year of sales, and it wasn't really even a full year, but none of that would have been possible without Mike. So
yeah,
Mike, as they say, don't refer to him as dad all the time because it's kind of unprofessional. But
it's kind of,
how do you stop calling your dad dad?
I don't know. It's one of those things that's like hard. I think it's almost unprofessional.
Like in email, sure, I can say, Mike, but like Mike. In conversation, it's so hard for me to check myself like Mike or like our president of the company or whatever, right? Like,
yeah.
It's just tricky for me.
That's hard.
And I'm not like, I like conversation, right? So I could get real personal with someone, and then I just say my dad,
I think it ties into your guys' story so much. And again, even I love having that like backseat when I come out to the presentations, and it's you and him and then Steve out there too. It's like it's like the dream team, and it's just fun to watch. And now Mike has like this different perspective, and he sits there as the owner, but he can just sit back, and then he adds his words of his touch, right?
Yes.
Like he has a certain touch.
Yeah, no, he's got a presence. There's just a vibe that he brings that no one else brings. He's very candid. He's very honest. I also think that's huge. Like, something I've learned in this industry is that it can sometimes have a rap for being like a shady industry. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take much to break into janitorial. We lovingly refer to certain groups as trunk slammers because it literally, a vacuum, a dust mop, a broom, whatever, like throw it in your trunk, you got yourself a cleaning business. That's what my granddad did.
That's what your grandpa,
in 1980. That's what he did, right? And so, it can sometimes have that shady vibe that comes with the industry. And so much of what he's done and so much of what Populous has done is to push back against that. And, we're constantly talking about open and honest communication. Our core values are evidence that, we are combating that shady industry rep that we might have, right? And that's tough to do, but I think that my dad has been a huge part of that, and so that's how he operates. He's open and honest all the time.
Well, and it's hard. It's easy, but it's hard, right? And it's something that one of those things like we talked about maybe a couple weeks ago of like giving people advice and just being kind of free with it, because it is hard to do the whole picture, because it's not just talking the talk. Anybody can talk this out loud.
Sure.
The reason why it's hard is because it has to be consistent
all the time.
It's not just like when you sold them and then you sold the deal and you get there and then all of a sudden everything that they saw, they're like, who's this company that we hired?
Exactly.
It's night and day.
Yeah.
No, it's top to bottom, and that starts with your dad, his integrity, his core values, and and how that's tied into you, into your brother, into the company, into the area managers, into Steve, and and it's tied into them because those are the type of people he's bringing on too.
Yeah. We've had some incredible change in the last 2 years, even since I've come back. We've done some restructure in operations. We brought in a director of operations, and you've got a chance to work with Steve. He's amazing.
Yeah.
He's one of my, easily one of my favorite people to just be around and, again, just soak up information and experience. I think that's one thing that in my role in doing what I'm doing, I tend to find myself being the youngest person in the room.
Yeah.
Most of the time. And
I've been there as a salesperson.
It's funny because if you talked to my wife, she'd tell you how much I complain about how old I am. Well, that's mostly just like my body from years of weightlifting, but and
chronologically,
right, exactly. And I've always felt like I've had a bit of an old soul. You know, I grew up watching old movies. I grew up listening to jazz music and different stuff. So it's kind of shaped me that way. But I'm typically the youngest person in the room. You know, so I'm not naive to the fact that there are so many folks out there that I can just learn immensely from.
Yeah.
And Steve's one of them, right? The whole operational overview at our company looks completely different.
Yeah.
And for the better.
It's only been like a year and 3 months, and 4 months.
Yeah.
Like
I know. We made the change before he came on board. We switched things up, but brought him in. Since then, some area managers have been brought in, and the team there's a lot of the same folks, but it looks different now.
Yeah.
Right. And it's awesome to see people really thriving in seats that they were supposed to be in. And it's awesome that our company is finally at a place where we were able to give them those opportunities, because I mean, that's in our mission statement, right? Is to provide opportunities for personal growth and professional growth. And so, you know, when you afford someone an opportunity to grow professionally, maybe that affords them the opportunity to go do something in their personal life too and grow that way. So it's been pretty cool to be a part of it over the past couple of years.
It's so cool. It's so cool. But that's what you're selling though too, right? And that's so cool because like when you have that layer of the area managers and like being able to bring them in feel like it's a bonus, right?
Yeah.
Like, as opposed to, you know, if you think about getting into operations, how many companies can say that like when I bring in my operations manager, like that's an added bonus to why they should buy us, as opposed to like, oh my God, I hope he shows up and like, he's like dressed nice.
Or like how many sales folks have good working relationships with their ops people?
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, I'm sure plenty do, but I'm sure plenty don't.
Yeah.
And so I that's a big piece of it for me too, is I never want to put operations in a position to fail. I mean, what's that do for anyone? So maybe I get paid, but the whole company looks bad on the flip side of that. So yeah,
that's what it's all your experiences. We talked about this a long time ago, that you have this thing that most salespeople don't have. Most salespeople are like, they're making up things, or, you know, they're like, sure, we can do that, because they don't have an understanding of what that looks like on operations side to make that happen, or that actually doesn't exist. You've had that experience, and then you have that respect and that connection, that communication with Steve and with that team, that, you know, you're actually underselling to your clients or your prospects. You're underselling to them.
Yeah. Well, all it takes is to set ops up poorly once or twice.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, I'm never going to do that again. I mean, I care about, I got childhood friends working in operations.
Yeah.
And so I care about these people outside of Populist. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so all it takes is setting them up poorly once, and you're like, man, I'll never do that again. I'll do everything possible to make sure I don't do that again. And that is like any relationship, that takes work, right? That takes checking in, that takes keeping a pulse on where things are in ops. That, you know, Steve Hamill and I, we're in constant contact. He probably like less contact from me, but you know, we're in constant contact, and if it's for that reason, I don't ever want to put him, his managers, or anyone in ops in a position to fail.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe there's salespeople out there that don't care so much about that.
Most, you know, and some of the times, again, it's not even, it's just they don't have an understanding like you do.
Right.
They haven't been through the experiences, and that's kind of like the theme
Yeah.
of this conversation, is how your experiences have set you up in positions to succeed, because that goes back to the customer. Not only would you be letting the ops team down, but then the client has that experience because you overpromised something.
Exactly.
As opposed to under-promising, and now the team's over-delivering, and they're able to say, wow, we love this, we love this.
Yeah, managing the expectation, making sure that the expectation is within reason, and you know, it's a dance, and it's one that I'm getting better at. But honestly, you know, in all reality, I've been doing this for maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, my LinkedIn says I've been doing it for 2 years, but I think the first 2 months I was really just trying to get my feet under me.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even feel like it's been a full 2 years, you know, and I've had some incredible success along the way. And I don't know, you know, who to attribute that success to, aside from just the people around me, and the experiences that I've had in my own life, right? That I've been able to translate into what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Because like we said, I didn't have that sales experience leading up to jumping into this role and kind of figuring it out.
I think it is kind of that, it's a blend. Because it ties into your experiences, like your life experiences, like you talked about. You know, you've gotten so much from your dad, and you're so similar to your dad. But you had that experience through the fire service that gives you a different perspective, different perspective. You know, that you're like, I see the world a little bit differently. Yeah, you know, you're able to think a little bit differently. The people, obviously, the people that you're surrounding yourself around, people that come into your life, and then the most important thing though is you. Right. In that coachability. And I know you talked about that in a post, you know, last week, but
no, I do think, and I've kind of realized this as I've gotten a bit older, but I do think if anything, I'm just coachable. And I think that's maybe my most valuable asset, if I'm being honest, because a lot of different things I've just started up and decided to do. And it's all about finding the right people to coach you. And but you know, that does, and I said this in that post, that does no good if you can't receive it correctly, right? If you can't grow from the coaching that you're receiving. So, you know, that started in the fire service and carried into fitness in a realm that I was also very unfamiliar with at the time. I mean, I was athletic. I grew up playing 2-3 different sports. You know, we grew up playing football in the street nonstop. We were just athletic, right? It was like go outside. I wasn't allowed to have game systems growing. So the joke is that my parents were like super old school for their generation, right? And so like no game systems in our house. You know, there were super strict rules about TV. I didn't have a TV in my room. So, you know, when I was grounded as a kid, and I was grounded a lot, it was stare at the wall in your room. So it was actually painful. Oh yeah, big time. Stare at the wall in your room, read a book, or look out the window at your friends playing down the street, right? And somehow every time I was in there, I'd be like, I'm never going to be here again. And then I would be there again. So, you know, but just...
Do you think that led into like how you're self-aware now? Like all that time in the room?
Oh yeah. I would think so. Yeah. Like if you, Jason, I spent so much time in trouble, man. You have to self-evaluate. I mean, you put yourself in these positions where you're like, how did I get here? And eventually it gets to the point in your life where you're like, you are the only reason that you are in this predicament that you are in. You can't blame anyone else. Yeah. You know, I went through phases where I'm blaming my parents, I'm blaming my brother, I'm blaming my friends, whatever, right? No, it was always my fault. It was always my fault. And, you know, what can you do except identify that first? Was one of the hardest things for people to do, right? Yeah. Identify it and then change, which is the second hardest thing to do, obviously. But you know, that's that coach, right? Or that's that person in your life that can coach you. That happened in fitness.
It was recognizing that you needed it.
Exactly.
Because you were there and you're like, I need something. I need
something, or I'm going to implode, right? Or I'm my own worst enemy, right? I gotta put some structure in place. I need something with a heck of a lot of discipline. And you know, I'd had some of those roots in exercises of discipline. You know, I grew up playing the piano, and my whole family played the piano. My grandparents were concert pianists, and my grandfather taught all over the country, a couple different spots, landed here. And then, so that was very much a piece of, you know, my upbringing, as much as I didn't want to practice the piano. And I think I posted this too at one point. My grandma would be like, discipline is doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it. And that's super valuable because I feel like in every role that I've held in my life, there's been those things that I don't want to do when I don't want to do them. Yeah. But you have to be able to do those things.
Making sales calls when you first start out of sales.
Yeah. Or making sales calls making sales calls.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
no, and then kudos to you because, I mean, you have your dad there, but like you're
Right.
literally, you're not in a team. You're
No,
figuring
I'm
out
just
sales.
like on this island. I
Just doing
got
what your
you
dad
over
has.
here as like an outlet, and I got like my dad over here. But yeah, you're kind of like, you know, we're not huge. We don't need multiple salespeople, right?
Yeah.
So I am the sales department, and that's interesting in and of itself, and managing your own time, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I talked about this with one of our area managers the other day who, you know, we kind of grew up together. He's local to Ypsilanti. And so we grew up together, and we've, you know, growing up, you have to punch the clock, right?
Yeah.
You have, I have an 8-hour shift, or I have a 10-hour shift, or in fire, I had a 12-hour shift, right? And
Yep.
so you're used to being there from this time to this time. And then to some degree you can check out and go home, right? But now we're both in roles, both him in a management role, and then me in sales, where it's like, no,
It never ends.
you're on a salary. You're like working around the clock if you're not careful. You have to be
Yeah.
able to put parameters in place
Yes.
for you to be successful. One, so you don't feel like you're burnt out all the time. But two, so that you're working enough. I mean, what is the balance, right? That's what you're trying to find. And I think that's been, you know, a challenge for me in like we talked earlier, like I don't know how to take a vacation, but
Yeah.
managing your time effectively. I mean, that's a discipline in and of itself.
Well, and even like, and again, just like when you first started, like getting,
Yeah.
it's like going through and making cold calls, like
Because I'm starting from like nothing.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we had maybe, you know, a few opportunities in the CRM, and I think we basically went through and tossed most of what was in there because we had decided, you know, as every business does, you have to decide what you're good at, who you're good at serving, and
Yeah.
you have to stay in that lane to some degree. If you are like a squirrel and you go after every little opportunity to make money, you know, jack of all trades, master of none potentially. So
Yeah.
we had identified, okay, this is the type of customer we want to serve, and now you need to go after those customers. And so a lot of what existed in the CRM before I came on was not in
that
those
fit.
it was not the fit. So it was start from scratch in a lot of ways. And so I had to dive in and just grind. So
Well, that's huge resolve, and I wanted to like repeat that over again because any salesperson that's listening to this, like I've been in sales like 23 years. You know, I've worked with hundreds of salespeople.
Yeah.
Like to sit down and with really it's yourself. You have your dad again, but like it's yourself in your own, like, because you could sit there and say you made 20 calls. Like it doesn't, you know, you could make up however many.
Sure, right.
But you know at the end of the day how many you did.
right. And so it's like, am I doing enough?
Yep.
Am I doing enough? Because you can't lie to yourself. I mean, if you're lying to yourself, I suppose you could lie to yourself, but you're just setting yourself up to fail, right? And I would sit in any role at Populist that they told me I needed to sit in. Like I said, when I decided to come back, that was it. Like I was like, okay, you're coming back, and it's, you know, barring the world blows up, like you're back. So make sure that you never put yourself in a position where you're compromising your relationship with the company and taking that for granted. And make sure that no one ever questions whether you're supposed to be sitting in a seat you're sitting in. And I think that's just always in the back of my brain, is like, prove your worth here.
Prove your worth.
Yeah.
And I know, like, tying into this, like, you know, it's not just, I mean, you look at sales, and I think a lot of us look at sales and we think we have an opportunity to obviously make commissions and build and support our family, build our, you know, whatever our desires and goals and like for our personal selves.
Yeah.
But then you look at it and it is a family business, but then looking at like how many people have been hired in Populist to jobs that you've closed that started off as a cold call for you.
Yeah, no, it's super cool to watch the growth. And like I said, it's super cool to watch people sit in seats that they're finally able to sit in now.
Yeah.
You know, like we have I'm Stephen Mayo.
Yeah.
Culture and engagement guy. And boy, if there was ever a role made for that guy, I mean, that is it. And I love it. And so, you know, I worked with Steve in ops, a Mayo, and even then, he was my first ops manager. And so the training, the way he went about training, I mean, just the energy that he would breathe into you. Now, most people don't get fired up about cleaning a toilet. But Stephen Mayo
I could
does.
see him getting fired up.
Stephen Mayo gets fired up. And it's just so cool to now see him in that role.
Yeah. Being
able to engage staff members. I mean, we've put a heavy emphasis on the culture inside our organization. And I don't know, culture is the buzzword of today, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And so, everybody
talks it.
Yeah. Everybody talks it. Everybody talks it, right? But do they actually do it?
Yep.
And do they do it in the cleaning industry of all places?
Yeah.
It's hard to do. I mean, we have, we're spread out. We're not under one roof. There's a lot of challenges that come with that. But if we hadn't grown the way we have in the last couple of years, in the sales that I've made, I don't think Steve would be in the role he's in yet.
Yeah.
That's huge.
That's huge.
And him being in the role he's in, we've already seen the difference that it's made internally.
Yeah.
In recruitment, in engagement, and stuff like that. I mean, he's knocking the ball out of the park. It's awesome to watch.
The microscope. Look the difference it's making in his family's life.
Right. Exactly.
Being in a role, being able to work your way up and then finding a role that is truly a fit for you.
Yeah.
And going back, when he interviewed to work at a cleaning company, did he ever think that you'd be in this role? I don't even have to even ask him that to imagine that there's no way he could have possibly imagined that he would be in the role that he's in today.
Right.
Right. And the reason why that is because you guys need to hire more people.
Yeah.
And there's a focus on people because people is the most important thing. You're literally hiring cleaning crews for different companies and organizations out there. And so for example, the ProMedica comes on and all of a sudden you got to hire employees to go and clean that.
Yeah. And he's crushed it.
Yeah.
I mean, and every step of the way he's crushed it. And it's another thing where he was kind of put in that role. Maybe he was a little unsure of how that was going to shake out for him, but man, has he really grabbed the bull by the horns and run with it.
But it's another example of that experience, those experiences.
Yep.
He's so good in that role. One, because his personality, his purpose.
Sure.
He's got that energy.
Right, but two, it's 7 years of experience inside the company. It's 8 years of experience inside the company.
Cleaning from that area manager role to being in the roles that he's hiring for, he's been in. And then he's the picture of anybody that wants to grow in the company. He's been there. We have
this informal saying, everybody cleans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we mean that, right? So obviously not everybody is supposed to clean, but push comes to shove, everybody cleans.
Yeah.
And Steve embodies that. First guy to drop everything and run out there and help.
So awesome.
That's the type of guy you want to be like.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's just the people that you guys have it's that populous, and to see that it's just really cool. It's across the board, and again, as the salesperson, you're going out and that's what you're repping.
Yeah, well,
that's the product.
Yeah, and just being able to provide, everybody wants something different from their work life, right? And in our industry, historically, our industry was built on part-time employees. At least for our company in recent years, we've experienced a change in that dynamic where we're probably about 50-50 now, where it's full-time folks and part-time folks. So where it maybe used to be 80-20, now it's 50-50, right?
Yeah.
And so that's interesting that people are like, okay, I can make a full-time career out of the cleaning industry. Now, what person comes through high school and college thinking that? We have this saying that you fall into the cleaning industry by accident.
Much like sales. Yeah.
And it's true. But there's been a change there where, is that just our company though? Is that people want to be full-time with us, right?
Yeah.
Which is super neat if that's the case. But you're providing something different for everyone, but what you're really providing is just opportunity and what they do with that opportunity, for maybe it's someone who's just trying to pay off some debt and they're working part-time. They got another full-time job. It's cool to be a piece of that success story, right? Like they worked at Populous for 4 years or whatever, and they paid off 2 cars or whatever they did, right?
Yeah.
They paid off their house, or they paid off whatever student loan debt they had, or whatever it was. Maybe it's a different story along the way, right? But the full-time folks, they come in. Steve Ameo came in, part-time role, worked his way to where he is now, has basically held like 6 different seats along the way because the company's changed, right? But like that experience is incredible. You can't take that away from him. And like you said, it then translates to personal life.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly how Populous started. It was, okay, my granddad was still very much of a musician and was rooted in certain things outside of his work life that he wanted to continue. Mm-hmm. And what did Populous do for him? It allowed him the opportunity to continue doing those things. It funded certain opportunities for in his personal life. Yeah. That's what I hope we're doing for our staff members.
Well, it's cool because everybody wants something different, right? There are some people that they want a easy job. They can go work at, midnights and, punch in, punch out their 8 hours and then go home and play their music or paint their, art or
do their art, whatever
it is that they're really into. They have a side hustle or something that
fund
they
their
love
hobby.
just
Exactly.
hanging out with their family. They get to do that all day, whatever it is. Yeah. And then there's those people like the Steves that want to grow in the company.
And that's the thing that's really what my role is helping with, right? Is those opportunities for folks to grow inside Populous. Because if we continue to grow as our goals are set, and as we continue to meet those goals, there is more and more opportunity to be allowed for everyone, right? And to be shared.
Yeah.
And, when part of the whole EOS model is your what is it, your big, hairy, audacious goal or whatever it is, a 10-year goal, right?
Yeah.
And we read that quarterly at our Zoom meeting, and it fires me up every single time I hear it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't fire you up, that you're probably with the wrong company.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, and it's tying in. Is it real? Can you see it? Is it real?
Sure.
Because, people can work for a company and not feel that.
Right. And so everyone can talk about it, but can you see that through?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. It's one of those things, and like, you'll never hear a conversation with a salesperson diving in and talking about like your real role in the company is to provide opportunity.
Right.
Like who talks like that? I
mean, it's just so cool. Like, and I think my dad probably talked about this a little bit when he was on, but the quarterly Zoom call that we've recently, well, I say recently now, but it's probably been happening for about a year. I mean, we've had it for almost 6-ish quarters
quarterly,
now.
So
yeah, 6 quarters, probably a year and a half now, and it just keeps growing. The people on that call is just like new people, and then my favorite piece of that call is the managers getting on there and just hyping up their team and shouting out their team and just the love that is on that call.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, I know what it's like to be out there nightly in the grind.
Yeah.
And it is thankless on any given night. And to get on a call where, half the company is there and you get your name shouted out because you've picked up some slack and helped somewhere, or you've just been crushing your role. That's awesome.
To be part of something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
When you can be part of the cause or part of the purpose.
Yeah.
When you can take that quarterly break and join that call and take kind of come up above water.
Yeah.
And look around and be like, this is where we've come.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is what's going on. This is what people are doing.
Yeah. Because in the whirlwind of day to day, you lose sight of that sometimes.
Absolutely.
I mean, you got to see, I think it was like the first call that you witnessed, you were like, they hired 30 people last quarter.
Yeah.
Like 30 plus people.
Second one.
Yeah, second one. Yeah. And like for me, it's like I lose track of that stuff because I'm like, okay, I got my things I got to do each day. But to take a step back and just kind of observe what has been done and just kind of see how the team has grown.
One was just really cool because it was like talking about 30 people, but then there was like different people coming on and talking about how they were so grateful for their job.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, I'm over at the Kershaw site. I'm over at the, and I don't know.
Right. All the different sites, right?
I'm at all these different sites in like every time I heard a name, I thought of like, man, I've heard that name because like we've talked about that name being in your pipeline. So that started off as a cold call.
Yeah.
Like you started off as someone telling you to get lost and like you staying on over and over and over again until it finally landed. And now you have all these people that are like, I'm grateful for my job that I have here at this place. And it's like, when you look at that from that aspect, if a salesperson looks at it from that aspect, it does give you a whole different fire to your job. It's more than just you.
It's like it's a unique, holistic view of like what you're doing inside the company, for the company, really. I just I want to be a good steward of my role here, right? And I think that I could sell a lot and I could make a lot of money, but what good does that do?
Yeah.
If folks aren't in the right seats, if the team is growing the wrong way, if people, if they're not the right fit, if the customer's not the right fit, just, it's a holistic view of what you're doing. And it's unique to me, right? Because it's my family's company. So it's a bit of like a legacy thing, but it's also, I want to do right by my granddad and my dad in what they've invested. And not to mention the slew of other people that have made Populist possible.
Yeah.
Because my dad would be the first one to tell you that without these 1,000 people, we're not where we are.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. It's all the people.
We're in the people business.
Yeah.
No matter what cleaning business, but we're in the people business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing is no matter what business you're in,
you are in the people. Yeah.
Like you guys recognize it.
Yep.
And it's like the major focus.
Populist. The root of that word relates back to, you'd have to look it up, but it relates back to of the people.
Yeah. It's like we are the people or
something like that. Yeah. You'd have to Google it.
I know. I do have to Google it. So it's something with history.
But I know it's tied into people.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're in the people business.
That's really cool. And, and I talk about this all the time because it's just really exciting to see. And I get to be a part of seeing this and be a part of it, just period, is you see so many. In fact, when I talk about like, oh yeah, I'm working with like the third generation of the company, people are like, oh, because most third generations are like the cause of like the company to go downhill.
Right.
It's like, no, this is so awesome. Cause I'm watching, like you see like your dad, obviously your granddad started the company. Mm-hmm. Your dad took it serious, grew it, took it to where it's at now. Yep. But then I see you and I see your brother Matt coming on and just being that like, like seeing where this
watch out
is
for
going.
Matt too, man.
Dude, I know, man.
Yeah, you sit in those meetings with him, and he's just like, Matt has always blown me away.
Yoda.
His wisdom beyond his years, and seriously, like I have to give him credit for. Like I said, I got into a lot of trouble growing up. He watched me get into a lot of trouble, and he took notes, like he's so good at doing. Filed it all away and said, okay, here's things I'm never going to do. And here's things I am going to do, right? And, but really, he's also been just the yin to my yang. And it just speaks to my parents, speaks to my family. The culture inside our home was such that I'm the oldest of four.
Yep. And
I would not trade any of them for the world. I have a great relationship with all my brothers. And I have a different relationship with all my brothers, obviously. My youngest brother's 19, 20. And then Matt is 26. So different relationship.
Yeah.
But Matt has always been, I used to refer to him as my caboose when I was 12, but so much so as I grew older, he was the voice of reason in my life. And you think about that, he's younger than me, right? It's just nuts. Like, he's younger than me, and he's always been the voice of reason. He's always been a sounding board. He's always been there, right? Not everybody has a great relationship with their siblings, and so I'm so blessed to have that 3 times over.
Yeah.
Matt and I are closest in age, so I would consider us, the best of friends. We grew up doing all the same things.
I remember you said like built-in best friend.
Yeah,
right?
Built-in best friend. And as, life goes on and people come and go in your life, you appreciate that even more. And so to watch him, he went and did his thing. He won the national championship at Adrian, and I'll just go on record saying that wouldn't have happened without him on that team. He was the captain there, and what an incredible accomplishment for him. And then he leaves that behind and comes back to Populist and has really just impressed every step of the way from what I've gathered. I don't work with him really.
Yeah.
But I'm around a lot of people that work alongside him, and everyone's impressed.
I get to be in the leadership meetings, and,
Yeah.
and when he came in, time flies by. I don't even know. It was a while ago.
Yeah.
He came in as, as your dad's admin assistant, and he
Yep.
was like taking the notes and helping facilitate our meeting. And
Yeah.
And that was how it started. And it's just he's become a valuable part of that team because he'd sit there and he'd just listen.
Yeah.
And then as we're all like going back and forth, he would just quietly interject this wisdom of
Yep.
like what he saw that was like a perfect summarization of like, and it happened time and time and time again.
Yeah.
That it's like, and he'll sit there quiet the whole entire time, and then just like he'll say his like
Right. And then you're like, who's this guy? How old is he?
I know. He'll say
Where'd
his
he come
paragraph.
from?
I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
But that's what's so fun for me is because like I'm here for whatever blip of time, right? But like where I get to, I look at my role as like getting to mentor you in
Yeah.
that role, like to be able to watch this third generation take it, and like for me forever,
Yeah.
till the day I die, as I watch Populous continue to grow from whatever seat and capacity that is, I'll
Yeah.
always have like this, like tear of like
Yeah.
watching that and
Yeah.
like remembering.
Yes.
These moments in time of like remembering you as a young man and like
Yeah. It's
I'm
pretty
gonna remember
cool.
you we're gonna be talking and you're gonna be 50 and like this
Yeah.
is, and like
Yeah.
remember this
Yeah.
like
Yeah. No, I mean, it's crazy, Jason. Like I don't even, like I said, I'm the youngest person in the room most of the time. And so to think that my brother's even younger than me and there's like all this time ahead of us
yeah
to accomplish all these things.
and the infrastructure is set in place
And
so
it's
just-
there,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so, keep the right people in the right seats and continue to ensure that the right people are sitting in the right seats. And the sky's the limit. I mean, it fires me up. It gives me goosebumps, really. And to have my brother, my best friend, to be a part of that, and to hopefully someday be at the helm of the company together. And I don't know what that looks like. And it's not like I'm going to pretend to know what that looks like.
Yeah.
I know that he is an incredible leader, because I'm not an easy person to lead. and it's also not easy to lead a bunch of college age dudes to a national championship and to win 33 straight games or whatever it was after losing the first one. And then they went undefeated the rest of the year. I mean, there's a gift there.
yeah oh yeah
I mean, he's a special kid. That's
yeah.
for sure.
It's awesome watching him find that place. I don't know if he knew where he was gonna go
No, I don't. Yeah, and so he went out and did his own things in his own regard. Did the hockey thing, moved away, went up to Canada, did junior hockey, was in Minnesota doing junior hockey, was down in Adrian going to college, and I was not going to college. I was doing a bunch of other stuff that we went over earlier.
Yep.
And so we've both had these different experiences, but we've gone out and we've experienced the world outside of Populous.
yeah which is so important.
I think it's so important. And in every family business book that you read, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
And that you don't want it to feel like, you don't want the kids to feel trapped, right? You want them to know that they can go out and do whatever. But you
It's
also,
your choice.
Yeah, exactly. And you want to enable that, but you also don't want them to just rest on their hunches and be like, okay, yeah, I can sit here because I'm dad's son and I can collect a paycheck and not do that much.
Yeah.
Right. And I think both him and I are nothing like that. I mean, if you've met my parents, you know why we're nothing like that.
Well, that's what I tell in the story. Is like anybody that's like, oh, third generation, like, no, you don't even understand. And the reason being, and like, you go through it, like you left.
Yes.
And it wasn't forced on your throat. You've got to do this.
Yep. I left on my own and said, okay, I'm going to go try these things out. I got kicked around a bit.
Yep.
As the world has a tendency to do to you.
Yeah.
And came back and now have, 10 times the appreciation for the company that exists today and the culture and all the people. I mean, it's like my second family. I mean, It really is.
We've known some.
Yeah, I know.
For a
Seriously,
long
I've
time.
known some of them forever. You know, some of them, like my dad. So my dad's a partner, right, with the other family, the Wagners.
Yeah.
And Ruth Ann taught me French.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and now I work with her in a marketing capacity. I mean, it's just it's nuts.
That is nuts. Yeah.
And you grow, and your relationship changes with these people, and.
It's nuts because Ruth Ann taught your dad to homeschool.
Oh, I know, right? Isn't that
so,
wild?
To see that full circle and her telling about teaching Mike, and it's just so crazy how it's come around.
It's crazy. Your relationship changes with these people, and then you want to go back in time and apologize for the punk kid that you used to be.
That's the beauty, though, of getting older. Is you can go reflective.
Yeah.
And be you can see yourself back then, and then you can put it all in perspective.
I hope that I have. I hope that everyone is content with where Danny has developed to, or is happy with where Danny's at, because Danny was not always the good topic of discussion. And I think that's part of what makes me who I am, because I can laugh at myself in the sense that, golly, I've made so many mistakes in my life, and I've had the egg on my face so many times.
Yep.
But man, if I hadn't have made all those mistakes, I wouldn't be sitting here across from you.
You probably wouldn't have the skin to do sales.
Yeah, no, that's also true. Yeah.
I think that's probably the other thing that prepared you for that.
True.
So.
Yeah. No, the rejection. Holy cow. I mean, we still deal with that on a regular basis. I mean, who doesn't get told no nonstop and gets a little bit down about it on occasion, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you got to be tenacious. You got to be resilient, and I think that's when the gym scenario fell apart for me and my wife. That was a point in our life where things were really weird. It was this was the life we knew for 3 years. It's how we had met.
Yeah.
We had ties in that community that were just ripped apart, right? And sometimes that's how that has to happen. And in hindsight, Jason, if it hadn't happened that way, I don't know that I'd come back to Populous when I did.
Yeah.
I was working in the gym, and I was working at the fire department, and I was making solid money for being 22, 23 years old. And I think I would have continued to deal with a situation that I was unhappy with. And I think a lot of people do this.
Yeah.
You might refer to it as the golden handcuffs, where you're making the money.
Yep.
But you kind of hate where you're at. And so it takes some gumption to walk away from that. Well, I got the ties cut for me, right?
Yep.
And so we went our separate ways. And if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have considered going back to Populous and making the sacrifice that I made to go back.
Ties and everything happens for a reason.
Exactly.
So to wrap it up, and this year's been an awesome year, like we talked about, but there's been a big reason why this has been an awesome year. Tell me about kind of what's happened in kind of a different perspective.
Well, I had a baby.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
And like we said, I haven't taken much time off. Well, even time off is not time off when you've got a newborn at home. And all my new parents know exactly what I'm talking about. What an incredible ride. I mean, I thought I was self-aware, right?
Welcome to fatherhood.
Welcome to fatherhood. Welcome to the roller coaster of a lifetime. I mean, really, in my opinion. And I know each phase and each chapter is different. And I'm excited for each phase and each chapter. And I'm praying that this child is not me when he's 18 years old. But if he is,
you know how to deal with it.
I hope so. You have the kid, and within a month, you want to go back to your parents and you want to just apologize for everything, ever. I'm so sorry. There's no manual. There's no owner's manual. You're just trying to figure it out, and you guys did the best you could. I mean, really, what a crazy experience, and it's life-changing, right? I mean, it, life-changing.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a part of you that's changed forever, and it's an incredible roller coaster. 1 minute being incredibly frustrated with yourself, again, being self-aware, being incredibly frustrated with yourself and how you might handle situations. And then, literally 10 minutes later being this is the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with all those feelings.
It's a roller coaster, like you said a couple times.
I've not even processed it all. It's 6 months. He just turned 6 months the other day, and it's yeah.
I saw Mac
and he's
post,
3
like,
times
crazy.
the size, and I'm like, this is just wild. And he's doing they go from being this little bump that's like you're scared to touch even, or scared to break them, right? To where like they start to get personality. And while he's not said words yet, the day that he finds words, watch out, because he is so vocal. And to just witness that and to be able to interact with that to some degree. I mean, the freaking best part of my day is to come home, say hi to him. He can't say hi back, but he just lights up.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like what their day's been like.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. I mean, and
It's that pure, that unconditional love, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And shout out to my wife. Just shout out to my wife. I mean, she's just amazing. I could not do this without, like, this would not be possible without her. I couldn't do it without her. I'm a bit of a procrastinator. I think we all have a little bit of that in us, but I could have rationalized up and down reasons not to have a baby yet. And my wife was like giving me the nudge. And again, it was Danny was in his own way. So get out of your way, Danny. And who are you to stand in the way of allowing this wonderful woman to be a mother? Because that's what she wants to be.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
I mean, if nothing else, like, I've accomplished what I need to accomplish in this life. Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. So it's life-changing. It's a ride that you're on for the rest of your life. You're never not parents, right? I mean, you're, and then hopefully one day you grow old and they take care of you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in giving, I think the other really cool piece of that is watching your parents get to experience their first grandchild.
Yeah.
And really having put them through hell.
To give them an innocent baby.
Yeah, it's like, here's a consolation prize, right? And I really hope that it is, what it needs to be, because I did put them through it. And watching them interact with Wes is just amazing. There's not really words for it. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Well, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you were able to come down today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome conversation.
I knew this was going to be good.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah. Appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you.